Another tense night in West Papua tonight. The Indonesian region is bracing for another round of protests. Officials are deploying more than 1,000 police officers to the streets. This coming after unrest in a remote town on Wednesday. And over the course of this past week, the situation has become increasingly violent, with one soldier and 2 civilians killed, and that's according to the police. Though those numbers are being disputed by separatist groups who put the numbers actually quite a bit higher. These protests began when Papuan students were accused of desecrating the Indonesian flag. Now, it happened on the nation's Independence Day just over 2 weeks ago in Surabaya. The students were detained, tear-gassed, and allegedly called racist slurs. People took to the streets in protest of the students' treatment, but their demands have grown since then. Demonstrators are now calling for a referendum on independence from Indonesia. In response, the government has deployed over 1,000 troops to Papua to shut down the internet access to the region. And Papua is a former Dutch colony that is ethnically and culturally distinct from much of the rest of Indonesia. It was incorporated into the country in 1969 after the Netherlands relinquished control of that part of the island. Now it's located in the far east of the country, centered on the island of New Guinea. It represents a small but ever vocal minority of the population of Indonesia. Joining us tonight for representing the Indonesian government and their response on the situation is Abdul Qadir Jailani. He's Indonesia's ambassador to Canada, and he joins us tonight in Ottawa. Sir, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making time for us.
You're welcome.
Let's begin, sir, with those numbers, because we have from the police that there are about 3 individuals who've lost their lives as a result of the ongoing protests, and some would describe them as riots in the streets. But other groups are putting the numbers much higher. And regardless of where the number stands, we see the tension. We're seeing the burning down of buildings. We're seeing all the tension and the violence in the streets. So I wonder, what is Jakarta telling you? What is their plan to respond to what Papuans are saying in the streets?
Thank you. Of course, we are deeply concerned about the current situation in Papua. And we think that the protests are not a genuinely peaceful political rallies just for expressing legitimate political aspiration. They are indeed very violent. They are attacking our security personnel. They are burning down some government buildings and also torching public facilities. And we do realize that this incident is related to what happened last week in Malang, in East Java, in which there was racial derogatory remarks has been made by some people. And there's one thing I really want to tell about this. This racial abuse does not only hurt or inflict the feeling of the Papuans, but the whole Indonesian are feeling being hurt by such racial derogatory remarks.
Okay.
And for us, it is against the core principle of being Indonesian. There is one thing else that I really want to highlight, that in Indonesia there is one law, a law on anti-racial discrimination law.
An anti-racist, anti-racial discrimination law. So one cannot be discriminated against on the basis of their ethnic group, because Papuans do see themselves as being ethnically distinct from much of the rest of Indonesia.
Yes. For us, what happened in Malang last week, it is an offense. It is criminally punishable. So the president of Jokowi, you know that even last night, just made a very clear statement that the government will take a very firm legal action against those who are responsible for those racial remarks.
Ambassador, allow me to just interrupt for a moment, because you're right, we have heard from the president, and there has been a demonstration, at least verbally, of remorse and wanting to fix the situation. But last week, we spoke to a West Papuan independence leader named Benny Wenda. Now, he has been in exile in the UK for several years now, and he's been watching closely what's happening in the last few days in Indonesia, amongst the Papuan people. And he says this is nothing new, that this ongoing racial tension and this desire for independence has been going on for a long time. I want to play a clip of him from last week for you and get you to respond. So let's have a listen.
Thank you.
I think that people feel that enough is enough. Now the time for us to unite, come out and tell the world through this discrimination. So I think that the spontaneity come out, then people are calling for a referendum. That's why Indonesia is scared. If people come out on the street peacefully, they're really scared. That's why they use many ways to trying to calming down, use the violence.
So you have Benny Wenda there describing the use of violence by the Jakartan government through the military, through the police services. They say you've cut down access to the media. There's no internet access. People are not being able to vocalize to the rest of the world what it is that they desire. So how do you respond to this criticism?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would just want to say that there have been never discrimination or genocide as groundlessly claimed by some separatist group. And you know, this a narrative has been intentionally fabricated by certain groups, only serve for one purpose, just to create an opinion that there has been a human rights violation, and also just to instill hatred and to divide our national unity.
So let's talk about that for a second, sir, because you say that there has not been a massacre, but certainly many Papuans would disagree with you. They say that tens of thousands of Papuans were massacred going back to the 60s. They do not want to be part of Indonesia. There is a significant voice saying that. They say for decades they want the right to choose for themselves who will govern them and who they want to be allied with. And in fact, in 2017, almost 2 million Papuans signed a petition that was taken to the UN demanding a referendum for independence. So why not just allow the referendum to happen?
For us, a referendum is not a good solution.
Okay.
Politically and legally is not feasible. First of all, from a legal perspective, you know, Indonesia, the Unitary Republic of Indonesia is a final, and you know that the legality and international recognition, the territorial integrity of Indonesia is widely accepted and is evidently undeniable. And the second thing is, I don't think having referendum it will be bring the goodness for the for Papuan and for the whole Indonesian.
Certainly some would disagree with you because they want to have the right to decide. If what you're saying is true, that it would not be good, then theoretically most Papuans would vote against leaving Indonesia. So why not, in a functioning democracy, allow people to decide for themselves the right to self-determination?
As I told you that, you know, self-determination in Papua have been internally and externally exercised. There is no any reasons and there is no any legal ground to do that.
Okay.
And having referendum at this point, we don't see any justification from legal or political perspective.
Okay. Now, I want to bring up something that you had mentioned earlier, which was the statements that were coming from the president. We know on Monday he released a statement asking for forgiveness, asking for a unity. And let's bring up the statement now, where in part he said, "My brothers and sisters in Papua and West Papua, I know you feel offended. Therefore, as fellow countrymen, to forgive each other is best. You may get angry, but forgiving is better." So, Ambassador, what exactly is the president asking forgiveness for?
Do you know, the main point is, for the president said that he simply emphasized the importance of being united. You know, being united as a brother and sister, as the same, our fellow nation, as a being Indonesian. This is the most important part. For us, last night, the president has made also clear very statement that the government in Indonesia still commit that the development of Indonesia, the development of Papua still continue, and nothing will prevent that.
If the people of Papua continue to come out on the streets, continue to protest, if buildings continue to be torched and people continue to be killed, how far is the Jakartan government willing to go in order to put a stop to this?
For sure, we will restore the situation by taking firm legal measures for those who are violating laws, including those who made racial discriminatory remarks. And at this moment, we don't know what's going to happen on the ground. Everything is dependent on the situation on the ground.
Okay. We will continue to watch. Sir, I want to thank you very much for your time this evening. Abdul Qadir Jailani is Indonesia's ambassador to Canada. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.